Well, let's get to our first topic of discussion this afternoon. The World Bank has approved a $1.5 billion financing package for Nigeria under a new program to support its health and education sectors and help provide sustainable power. The bank said this earlier this week. The World Bank is the largest lender to Nigeria with more than $15 billion in loans at the end of March. That's data from the Debt Management Office shows us figures. The bank said in a statement that the money will help increase availability of effectiveness of financing for basic education and primary health care service delivery. The World Bank also announced a $500 million grant to support Nigeria's recovery efforts from the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. This fund will be utilized through the Nigerian Community Action for Resilience and Economic Stimulus, that's NG Cares program. The program was launched in 2021 with the aid to aid poor and vulnerable households and micro, small and medium enterprises affected by the pandemic. Professor Ken Ife is a global economic consultant, an entrepreneur and key speaker whom over 30 years have spoken in over 40 countries and deliver strategic programs within engineering, technical services, enterprise development, and public policy. He's live in the studio to start the conversation with me. Good afternoon, Prof. It's good to have you in the Abuja studio live.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Prof. Prof, I think I want us to start with the fallout of the NESG. You know, it's a 3-day forum and everyone's talking about discussions, deliberations at this gathering. And I want to say it straight the way he said it. Nigeria must follow this course. And he says it might take another 10 to 15 years if we follow through these policies before we start to see light at the end of the tunnel. How does that come to you? How do you understand this statement?
Well, I think they are just restating the obvious, which is policy inconsistency, policy somersault, and all of that, because that has characterized our development space for quite a long time. They are not saying that we should tighten the belt forever, because there will be a public outcry. If you tell them that this whole suffering will go on for 15 years, nobody wants to hear that.
Nobody wants to hear.
Yeah, but what we should be saying to them is the market, is the language. That one of the major challenges of Nigerian development space is policy inconsistencies and policy somersault and all of that thing. And that if we can keep on course and then that there will be better opportunity to. So that's actually how I will sell it.
That's how you want them to say it. Okay, let's look at the recommendations before we move forward quickly. You're talking about, they said Nigeria needs to prioritize non-oil sector growth. These are discussions we've been having before now, Prof.
Correct.
We talked about the CNG thing, say the federal government must try to multiply these things and let people start to see it on transportation and all of that. And also, he said the economy, this is also very important to me, must be more business ready. What do you say to this?
Yeah, there are three categories of recommendations from them. One is, as you mentioned, protect the non-oil growth.
Yes.
And then also, in doing so, ensure you run down inflation. Because inflation is the greatest single macroeconomic parameter that drives people into millions and millions instantly into abject poverty and multiple deprivation. There's no two-way. That was why it is a core mandate of central bank. Fight inflation. But there's a tougher regime of inflation because what we have is stagflation. It's far more complicated. But they're doing their best because they are getting on top of the monetary policy parameters and then steadying them, stabilizing them, which is very, very essential for you to talk to foreign investment. You'll be getting portfolio, but not foreign direct. But anyway, that notwithstanding, so there's that commendation that is, we now have a handle on inflation. We have removed the arbitrage opportunity. We have aligned the rates, the forex rates, and once you have removed that oxygen in terms of arbitrage, then you can see it's been holding steady at 1,600.
They commended the CBN government actually.
So they've got a handle on it. Okay. What then happens is that with all this efficiency that will come from Dangote refineries and other domestic refineries coming on stream, and then you have selling crude in naira, purchasing in naira, you've removed over 15 to 20% or even more of the hemorrhage we are having from importation of crude and then the subsidy regime behind it. So more forex will be freed up to accrete to our reserves. And that helps us to protect the naira, to defend the naira. So in all probability, that height of 1,600 naira to $1 will begin to come down. And then those who are holding naira, who are dollarizing the dollar, they will be forced to start selling because they are going to be seeing the rate come down. So they will be forced to start selling. So in all intents and purposes, we will have a much better fiscal regime, touch wood.
It's interesting, Prof, because when some will tell you that we have professionals here that can manage our economy, that when the World Bank and IMF say something, but we need to take it very seriously. I think you agree with me, Prof, when they say anything that we must move by it. But let's look at this support coming, 1.57 Nigeria. Yeah. It's a loan.
There's a bit of grant there.
There's a bit of grant too, right?
The first one has 500 million loan and 70 million grant.
Okay, yes, there's a grant in it. We're looking at the
other ones, but they're all concessionary loans, though.
Okay, what does this mean for us? Let us understand. Because when Nigerians hear this figure, you know how an average Nigerian will react on social media or anywhere when he sees a story like this. Say, oh, a lot of money is coming into the country. How do we use data, or how can we appropriately, the funds like this, how can they be used and we feel the impact? Let me use it that way.
And let me tell you why I strongly support this particular loan.
Okay.
When we have the fiscal responsibility at 2007 that lays down reasons for borrowing and how and why and what. It says it has to be for capital expenditure and human resource development. Now, when you come to human resource development, you're talking about employment, you're talking about health, you're talking about education. It doesn't say borrow money from there to pay for poverty reduction. It doesn't say that.
Okay.
And then it also prescribes that there has to be what you call a cost-benefit analysis so that it can fixate you on the outcomes and then the impact and the output. But that is the one that we don't see. And I keep asking for those for years so that you can test the veracity of the claims or the things you are going to use that money for, and the performance indicators around what you are borrowing money for. So that has been the bane of our borrowing. Then now, if you notice that the last regime focused on the ease of doing business, improving the ease of doing business, because they were fixated on the World Bank ease of doing business indicators, which are about 10 of them, 10 pillars. And then so they were working on those. And you saw at 1 year, the increase moved to about 20 points up. So there's something that they are working with. You can see all those parameters. The first one, which is registration of business, you could see CAC now doing 1 day. Well, you could see even the multiple taxation. You could see all of, and then you also saw an omnibus legislation that brought all the loose, and then so there were parameters that we are using to measure.
Okay.
But in all the borrowing on social and socio-economic and all this health, nothing. Education, they were not measuring it. But now you have 1.57 billion that is going to fixate on outcomes. They want to see health outcomes, education outcomes. They want to measure them. So the first one, which is 570 million,
primary health care,
is right? Primary health care, but it's focusing on outcomes. Let me give you some example.
Okay, please.
If you look at UNDP Human Development Index, we board last. All of these indices I'm going to mention, Nigeria boards last in all of them. Honestly, when I say boarding last, if you are 157 out of 170, you don't board last because we are in the 4th quartile of all of these indicators. Poverty index, index of multiple deprivation, human development index, World Bank human capital development. That one says a child born today, what are the indicators for him in 18 years' time? We have all the indicators. Nigeria boards last, honestly. You come to the Human Development Index, UNDP. It talks about infant mortality. It talks about maternal mortality. It talks about life expectancy. All of those we are boarding. We are boarding last. We are about 127 over 152. 122. That is, we are boarding last in all of those. So here, this lending is going to fixate on those parameters. And so next year, they are going to report improvement in our ranking in all of those. And then there are also World Economic Forum Global Competitiveness Index, which is very, very comprehensive. Again, we are not doing very well on that. We are still ranking 125 out of 137. So again, there are 10 constructs in that global indicator. But we will be now watching it's now easier for us to monitor because they have to give us the scorecards on all of those parameters. So that's why I'm very interested in that. Then the second loan was focusing on dams and trying to improve the use of those dams and safety in dams, and also to make sure that dams are fit for purpose. They are being used. We have over 300 dams in Nigeria. And about even in Oyo State, we have almost 20 dams in Oyo State. But they're using it very well because they're supplying fish to everybody in the country. But all these dams are meant to be supplying aquaculture. They are meant to be doing irrigation, all kinds of irrigation, drip, micro, all of them. They're also meant to provide water and sanitation. But they hardly, but they're there. The ones that are critical are the ones coming to flood the whole country through River Niger and River Benue. Not much has been done about it. So every year, you have that litany of woes that we're having flooding now, So there are issues there. And then they're also going to pay for planning new dams that are going to. So who knows? But it is there in the budget for planning new one. Then the third one looks at governance.
Yes.
Governance issues
that affect
the health delivery and also the education delivery. Now that is where it comes to government in its own service delivery. How do you improve to make sure that local governments, state government, or federal government are all pressing the right buttons and making sure that teachers and all of those are being, so that is about governance. So that's the difference between the first one, which is focusing on primary health delivery, and then governance of the entire mammoth. But again, all of those are going to be measured by performance criteria that we already know that are existing.
It's interesting, Prof. When you went back again to management, implementation is key.
Definitely.
It is key because so many believe that when this money is coming, how well are we going to deploy them? Do we have schemes to monitor and evaluate, at least to a level, to understand that this is implemented 80%, 90%, even if we don't get 100%?
Well, that's what the funding is for. Because if you didn't have what is going on in ease of doing business, you wouldn't have been able to measure the changes. But now here, the structures you are going to build are the structure that will enable you set those parameters and then measure against them, and then come and see how it affects our position in ranking. So it has work to be done.
Oh, great.
That is why it is. That's why I support it.
Great.
Because if people can tell you, civil servants will write reports for you. They did this, and these reports are about process, never about output, never about outcome, never about impact. But here you are going to be focusing on registering, recording outcomes and then bringing them on a world scale to see how Nigerian situation improves or fails to improve.
No jokes.
So there's accountability. Very, very strict.
No jokes here, then. No jokes, Prof. Prof, let's look ahead. Everyone believes that there will be light at the end of the tunnel, or the current economic challenge that we face, the fallout from the reforms instituted by government. But even the World Bank says that's the way to go. So let's just have an outlook. What do you think would play out as we move towards the end of the year if things are done properly? I like to put it that way. If things are followed to the latter and all of the social investment, maybe initiatives of governments are properly implemented, they target the vulnerable ones, because when these monies sometimes are released for subsidy to support the fallout of subsidy removal, many will say, are you sure it gets to the right people? Are you sure those vulnerable ones get it? If things are done normally, what is your outlook, Prof?
No, the thing is that I have to tell you that in the macroeconomic challenges that we are facing, we have a handle on some, but not on some. For example, in the monetary policy space, we now have a perfect handle on monetary policy space because you can see the effect. And then, of course, you come to the fiscal policy space. We also have a handle now on fiscal policy. There's a comprehensive reform package on fiscal policy. I have debated this many times on the television, and I think they sound good. I'm only hoping that it gets passed, and then the president assents to it, and people go to work to implement it. For example, we are looking, when you focus on the citizens, you see that the new reform is looking at what is it that citizens spend their money on. They pay electricity bill, they pay petrol bill, they pay that, they buy food. They remove VAT on those so that they don't. So it's actually targeted them. Then you come to the business community, it says, okay, no, your multiple taxation is hurting business. And so what is the case? The case, it looks at 60 tax regimes and says, but wait a minute, only 6 of these gives government 95% of their revenue. So what are you doing with these 54? Get rid of those. So you now see them reducing all these, compounding them to about 10 in tax. So they are removing the burden for businesses. It also looks at, apart from that, actually, why you had a 25 million threshold before this mob, raise it to 50 million. That are practical measures that are going to actually complement fiscal policy. Then it comes to look at, you remember half of our revenue, government revenue, one half of the revenue goes to incentives, so-called incentives, waivers, and all these waivers and all. They say, no, do away with those. Do strategic sectors. Let's know focus sectors that are impactful on the economy and bring the benefit to them. So they're streamlining. So that tax thing is going to be very, very effective if it gets implemented. But first of all, let them get passed and then move. So you can now see how fiscal policy is coming in to lock on with monetary policy to really push the economy forward. I'm not too sure about trade policy because the last trade policy was 2002, I think, or so. And then when I was DFID, UK DFID trade advisor to Nigerian government, we wrote a new one in 2012. It was never presented to FEC. So till today, we're supposed to be doing that every 5 years. And then, the trade policy is completely out of sync. So we need to get that because the trade policy has so many things it should address. And I can give you just one of the challenges that it should address. If you notice, many countries are invading our economy with what you call dumping. Dumping is not just substandard goods. It is not only substandard goods. Yes. There's predatory pricing. Predatory pricing is the most dangerous form of dumping. Because what happens is that if you want to buy this in Japan or in China, it costs you more than buying it here. And then when they maintain high price, they reach their break-even, then they will now dump these goods at heavily subsidized prices into your economy. So killing and seeing any company that manufactures this product in your country, in our country, is going to be decimated. Yes. Because the prices arriving are not the real price of these goods. They are subsidized. So what our trade policy should say is we must have ad valorem. You understand? You must look, our tax policy should deal with individual countries, although we have a threshold on common external tariff with ECOWAS. So we won't change the bands, band A, band 2, band 3, although we won't change those. But we have a levy instrument that we can use on a particular case per country. So when you look at what is coming from that country, you look at the differential and then you use the levy to bump it up. So we need to do that to make sure that they are not killing our industries. Over 2 million workers lost on textile industry. So many companies, so many businesses, so many sectors, because we are not competing on fair terms. So that is what we could use. So the trade policy is failing. Investment policy, we have challenges on investment policies because of the investment environment and lots of issues around the business environment. And of course, the fiscal policy regime is helping on investment, but it has not attracted foreign direct investment. You saw it was 29 million when it should be in billions. What is growing is the foreign portfolio investment, which is neither here nor there, because if you cough, they will bugger off. But they are coming and staying the cost because they are watching the rates. Once there is a distance or a spread on the rates, and they will take the next exit.
Professor Ken Ife, I must thank you so much. It's always interesting having you on the program. We appreciate your time. Global economic consultant, entrepreneur, keynote speaker. Thank you so much, Prof. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you very much.
All right.